Okay, we're ready. Okay, we're ready.
I think that was an okay, right?
Yes, we're ready, Mayor.
Great. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 22nd, 2022 Hercules City Council meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Grimsley. No. Just doing a quick test. Can you hear me?
Mayor Bailey, while they get that sorted out, I'll go ahead and call roll for you.
I appreciate that. I was going to just ask. Thank you.
Councilmember Grimsley?
Present.
Councilmember Kelly?
Present.
Councilmember Romero?
Present.
Vice Mayor Walker Griffin?
Present.
And Mayor Bailey?
Present. City Attorney Tang, do we have any reportable actions from the closed session this evening?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we had only one item on for closed session, and it was a performance evaluation of the city manager pursuant to his employment agreement. There's no final or reportable action as a result of that discussion.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Kelly, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, thank you. Please place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a moment of silence. We'll take another moment of silence this week to remember the families and those affected by the war over in the Ukraine. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is introductions, presentations, and commission reports. City Manager Hall, I think we have an introduction tonight.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I wanted to welcome Lauren Burgess, who is our new city clerk and PIO for the City of Hercules. She brings with her over 20 years of experience in public sector. Most recently, she served as city clerk for the city of Katati, where she managed an array of city clerk services like agenda production, publication processes, elections, municipal records management. And so we're really glad to have her and her skill set here with us. She holds a BA in public administration from University of San Francisco and a master's of legal studies from Empire College School of Law. So we like to welcome her to the city.
Yes, welcome, Ms. Burgess.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Yes, we can.
Great.
Okay, so I think I'll just say a welcome on behalf of the entire council. We'll all see you coming in very soon. Very excited to have you here and looking forward to working with you.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing April 3rd through the 9th, 2022, as National Library Week here in the city of Hercules. And our Hercules librarian, Allison Peters, is here, I think, to receive that proclamation. So I'll read it now. This is a proclamation recognizing April 3rd to the 9th, 2022, as National Library Week in the city of Hercules. Whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that foster a sense of connection and build community. Whereas libraries connect people to technology, provide access to broadband internet, computers, and training, and are critical for accessing education and employment opportunities. Whereas libraries offer opportunities for everyone to connect with new ideas and become their best selves through access to multimedia content, programs, and classes, in addition to books. Whereas today's libraries and their services extend far beyond the four walls of the building, and everyone is welcome to use their resources. Whereas in times of crisis, libraries and library professionals play an invaluable role in supporting their community, both in person and virtually. Whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the population they serve and ensure equity of access to all. Whereas, to adapt to our changing world, libraries are expanding their resources and continuing to meet the needs of their patrons. Whereas, libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or social economic status. Whereas, libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Whereas, libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Dion Bailey, Mayor of the City of Hercules, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby recognize April 3rd through the 9th, 2022, as National Library Week. During this week, we encourage all residents to connect with their library by visiting online and in person to access resources and services. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Hercules to be affixed this 22nd day of March, 2022. We have a sort of a tradition. We have Ms. Peters here. So what we'll do is we'll go around the room with the council members, that is, and we will let folks say anything that they might like to share about how much we enjoy our library. We think it's a very special place here in town. I'm going to start just on my screen with Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And welcome, Ms. Peters. I love seeing you at the library, and I'll come by there tomorrow. As you know, I come by and I drop off books every week and pick up new books. And one of the things I love about our library is being able to order books online and then I come and pick them up. And quite often when I stroll into the library, when you see me, we meet and talk. And I'm just wondering, do you know when we'll be able to have some in-person events in the library? I miss those so very much. Anything on the horizon?
I do. Well, thank you first, Mayor Bailey and Councilmember Kelly for the words. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. And we have good news. We are watching the Omicron variants and things, but we are planning on a return to live programs in June, starting with story time because we miss the little ones and we do not want to skip another generation coming to story time. So as soon as we get that word, we will share it with this community. I invite everyone to come back now, but especially in June for story time. So thank you.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Councilmember Grimsley.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Allison, thank you so much for being here. It's exciting that we have a week dedicated to our library, and we have such a great library, and it's really just so wonderful to have you as our library manager because you have such natural enthusiasm for the library community and for our community at large. I know that you personally have been a lifelong reader, and we share that in common. So it's really just great to have someone that's so passionate about our library services, managing our library here in Hercules. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Councilmember Grimsley. Thank you.
And Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Allison, pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to the reading to the young children. I can't wait to see Mayor Bailey and the choice of his books when he reads. So I think I'll make sure that I'm there that evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll make sure you have a special invitation, Councilmember Romero.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And then Vice Mayor Walker Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Peters, for coming out again. It's always good to see you, my friend. And then special thank you to all your staff for these past 2 years. We all know that libraries serve as foundation for equity and inclusivity, especially for those who are less fortunate than others. So thank you to everything that you folks have been doing to ensuring that students and just residents of Hercules have access to the internet. I mean, it's become such a necessity nowadays and such a bridge builder that just like water, you need it to live and to survive. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Vice Mayor Walker Griffin. Thank you.
And Ms. Peters, again, thank you. You've helped us out with a lot of things. You and the library staff, right? Most recently, a non-library event was the COVID test kit handout that you helped facilitate for us, providing chairs, tables, and just letting us use your space. There are many other occasions in the past. We've had celebrations of different cultures in their history months at the library. And I do, like Councilmember Kelly and others said, look forward to that when we can get back to doing what we used to do, which I guess is the new normal, because we've been with the old normal for a couple of years now. I just really want to say I appreciate what you do. I think there's a lot of echoing that could go on here, but I just want to see if you want to have anything else you wanted to add.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Bailey. I do want to invite everyone to stop back. We are fully open. You can use our computers, our tables, our study rooms. It's quiet and lovely and beautiful. The trees are in bloom. We're having National Backyard Day this Saturday. So come on by, and we're going to have games and things for the little ones in our library outdoor spaces. So I just want to let everyone know we're open. We would love to see you. We welcome you back. After this, I'm going to log off to go help some other people and close down the library for the evening. But I appreciate all of you and your support very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is agenda additions and deletions. I will turn to the city manager, see if we have any agenda item additions or deletions.
No additions or deletions, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Burgess, do we have any public communications? Not on the agenda.
All email communications have been uploaded to the meeting portal, and nothing further has been received.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. We have no public hearings this evening, so that brings us to the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull anything that's on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing no hands, do we have a motion to approve the, Councilmember Romero?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would motion that we accept the consent calendar as is.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the consent calendar. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Romero, seconded by Vice Mayor Walker Griffin. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Grimsley.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Romero.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Walker Griffin.
Aye.
Mayor Bailey.
Aye, so that motion passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the successor agency discussion and or action items. I'll just remind the public that in this particular item, we're going to be acting as a board. With that, I think this is a city manager. Do you want to handle this one, or is it going to be finance?
Sure. I will turn it over to our finance director to start the conversation and introduce our team.
Thank you.
City Manager Hall. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. As you recall, on January 11th, the Successor Agency Board authorized staff to proceed with the financing of the successor agencies' tax allocation bonds. Interest rates are still at their historic low, and this refinancing will generate significant amount of savings for the taxing entities. And on January 24th, the County Oversight Board approved the refinancing of the tax allocation bonds, and that's the 60-day review period by the California Department of Finance was initiated on February 1st, 2022. And today we receive approval from the Department of Finance to proceed with the refunding. Tonight's recommendation action is to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary official statements and disclosure procedures. Our financing team is available here tonight to answer any specific questions the council might have. We have our bond counsel, Vanessa Legbon, our municipal advisor, Wing C. Fox, and our fiscal consultant, Susie Kim, will be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess we see if any board members have any questions. Yes. Board, I guess it's Director Romero, Board Member Romero.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. Yes, I guess my question is once we approve the resolution tonight, what would be the time sequence in coming back with the bonds?
Would you like me to address that?
Please.
Director Gatto. Good evening, members of the board. So if the resolution is adopted this evening, we are looking to go to the rating agency, S&P, next Monday, and then receive a rating, 1 or 1.5 weeks later, and then post the POS, the offering document that's attached around April 7th or maybe the following Monday, and then price the week of April 18th. And then we would close 2 weeks after that first week of May.
So we possibly would see this back the first meeting in May for approval, or it would be a done deal.
These bonds are already approved of the prior meeting.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Fox, and Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fox. Board Member Kelly.
Sorry, that was my question. I just wanted to know what the time sequence was. So it's answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, I thank staff for the report. I think this has been a long time coming, not just in the past few months, but I think in years trying to get this one refinanced. So thank you guys for the diligence you guys have put into this. And we look forward to, hearing back, probably through the city manager about the outcome in the first week of May. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we need it. Yes, go ahead.
I think you have to see if there's public comment, but then I'd like to make a motion.
Yes. Ms. Burgess, do you have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Looking to our attendees tonight, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raised hand icon, or you may dial *9 by using your telephone. Mayor Bailey, that will end public comment.
Thank you. So with that, I guess we're looking for a motion from council if there's no further discussion. Board
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we pass the resolution of the successor agency to the Hercules Redevelopment Agency, approving the form of a preliminary official statement to deem it final under Rule 15C2-12, approving disclosure procedures and authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith.
Thank you, Board Member Kelly. So we have a motion by Board Member Kelly. Do we have a second? I see Board Member Romero's hand raised.
Yes, Chair Bailey, I second the motion of Board Member Kelly.
Okay, so motion by Kelly, seconded by Romero. Do we have any discussion? None. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Member Grimsley.
Aye.
Board Member Kelly.
Aye.
Board Member Romero.
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker Griffin.
Aye.
Chair Bailey.
Aye. So it should be, if our notes are right here, motion carries 5-0. So that we're going to go back into, our council meeting in that regard. So the next item on the agenda is discussion and/or action items. The first item is Spring 22 Development Site and Capital Improvement Update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe our city clerk is going to put up our slide presentation. And so this is a development update that the city generally provides annually. And it's a really good opportunity for us to keep the council and community informed of development that's going on in the city. There's a real symbiotic relationship between development and us adding to our annual tax base to provide levels of service for the community that they expect and deserve. And so this presentation will provide updates and progress made since last year. We also want to take the opportunity not only to talk about development, but briefly talk about the status of our infrastructure projects and investment and kind of where we are with that. And then we will end our presentation with a discussion about our regional intermodal transportation center and the steps moving forward for that project. So I'll be sharing this presentation with our Public Works Director and also our RITC consultants. Were we able to put that presentation on the screen? Not sure which slide that one is. You can go to the beginning. Okay, great. So go ahead and advance that. I just gave the update, so we can go ahead and advance that slide. Once again, we'll talk a little bit about some of the completed projects. Of course, we have our Safeway project that was open in March 2021. It is under a temporary C of O. There's still a couple of things that Safeway needs to work on and do for us, but we gave her temporary C of O for the grocery store, 20 pump fuel center, Pete's Coffee, and Chase Bank. Before Safeway actually receives their final C of O, they need to work on a couple of items, namely the bus station on San Pablo, which they're working towards, the EV charging stations, and also improvements to the circulation of fueling station. They have made some improvements. They've added delineators to try to direct traffic. And also during peak hours, they have fuel center staff that go out and kind of help direct traffic so that there aren't any frustrated motorists or any type of issues that would cause conflict. So really excited about this project and also finalizing it with this final C of O. Next slide, please. So this is the Bayfront, obviously, and there are a number of individual projects, but generally when the plan is complete, it's 40-acre site with a mix of residential, retail, office, and flex space, and also a regional transit center with that includes multiple modes of travel. We'll cover in subsequent slides some of the projects that we're working on right now, but most of the development is taking place in really the northeastern part of the site with the Exchange, the Grand, and blocks M, P, and O. And that's what we'll talk about. Next slide, please. So the Exchange, this is complete. It's 172 apartments and ground floor retail, completed in August of 2020. They're approximately 85% leased up. They're still trying to get some tenants for the 14,000, this should be 1,000 square feet of retail space that they have available. And so the city has been in discussions with them about, who are they targeting and if there are things that the city can do to kind of help with soliciting businesses. But COVID, has really impacted people's ability and desire to really expand. But we're proud of it. It's a very beautiful site. We're very proud of it. Next slide. The next phase is the Grand, which was completed in May of 2021. It offers 232 apartments, ranging from studios to 2 bedrooms. It includes 15 units designated for households making 60% of area median income. So it provides some of the affordable units for our city. And it's a very nice development. No retail space. We're just talking housing here. And they're going to be leasing up pretty soon. Next slide, please. So, so this is the Willow Avenue self-storage, and the City Council actually had an item on their agenda last council meeting, and the council approved a temporary CFO for the center. They're nearly complete with the construction. They won't be able to open until they finish all of the safety issues and concerns. They're working with the city to efficiently match the sewer capacity with the uses on the site. And so what we pledged to council was to work with the developer and return to council shortly to resolve those sewer issues so that they can finish the construction and open permanently. This is a unique project because the city will be receiving some additional tax revenue to the tune of about $150,000, $250,000 annually, which will add to our coffers to provide services for the community. So more to come on that. Next slide, please. We'll talk about some of the continuing projects. Next slide. So actually, this is not the slide. What this should be is it should say blocks M, P, and O, and I believe that it's correct in the packet. It's just not correct on the screen. But this is the third phase of the Bayfront project. It was approved by the Planning Commission in 2019. And it will make up, like I said, third phase of that development, approximately 450 housing units in 3 blocks with some amenity space. The developer has submitted for building permits and really looks to begin construction shortly. This section under the Bayfront really refers to blocks A, B, C, and D, which the developer will be working with the city in going to the community to talk about some potential amendments to the master plan. But we're intending to have those town meetings in late August. We're going to be doing some enhanced outreach for that. We'll collect that information and then come back to City Council and kind of let the council know what was said in the community meetings. And then we'll kind of plan and go from there. But we're really excited about the blocks M, P, and O. And we're also excited to start the discussion about the heights, which is A, B, C, and D. Next slide. On the horizon, next slide, we have a couple of projects. Of course, the Franklin Canyon project was approved by the City Council in February. And it's a destination RV resort with 158 RVs, 22 bungalow tents, a clubhouse and restaurant. And also, it's going to protect 70 acres of open space for uses like hiking, biking, and so forth. It will also generate some additional tax, TOT tax, for all overnight visitors. And 10% of TOT tax will come back to the city, essentially, to use for services for the community. The construction is estimated to take about 18 to 24 months. And we're anticipating, or the developer is anticipating, starting that or opening summer of 2024. So more to come on that project. Next project, next slide, please, is the D.R. Horton project, or Skelly project. And we had a shirt sleeve meeting about the conceptual development, and City Council and the community was able to provide some general comments for this 40 single family resident development. And also they're going to include 2 below market rate units. Next, the developer is looking to submit an application for the city if, in moving forward, looking to demolish the site and start grading mid-2023, if all goes well, and starting construction in 2024, and hopefully finishing in 2025. But we really appreciate the way the developer has included the community and taken his time to really understand the issues of the neighborhood and the desires of the city council. Next slide. Sycamore Crossing, we're still working with the developer on this group. Of course, this is a Lewis Group project that is to include retail, hotel use, and residential use. And like I said, we're working with the developer in this project. We have a meeting, I believe, this week, and more information to come soon on this project. But it is a work in progress for the city. Next slide. Okay, and so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director, Mike Roberts, who will take us through the capital improvement projects and give a brief update on each project.
Thank you, City Manager Hall. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we segue here from development to capital improvement program, I thought Council would be interested to know that many of these private development projects, in fact, are constructing public improvements which aren't included in the program. The most recent example, which City Manager Hall mentioned, would be the Hercules self-storage. They are putting a lift station in that will become public, serve 6 other properties, as well as are widening Willow Avenue to add a left turn lane onto Palm, which will allow traffic operations to be more efficient in the morning as many residents take their kids to school. And also is making improvements at Palm and Willow, where historically the water has run over the street and frozen and created black ice. Oftentimes we've had signs out there, the police have had to come out there for safety reasons. That will now be all undergrounded. And in fact, of these development projects, it's estimated they'll be constructing about $8 to $10 million of public improvements, all of which of course will be carefully overseen by staff. So regarding the capital improvements program itself, it's a 20-year window. The first 5 years are where most of the planning occurs. And next slide, please. It's functionally organized into 5 areas for organizational purposes. Next slide, please. The first one being streets. So as far as our annual sidewalk repair program, there was $65,000 in the budget. Currently, $50,000 worth of repairs are underway. This would be correcting tripping hazards. We've also undertaken a American Disability Act major roads assessment, and we've gotten that report back in draft form. The idea is to make sure we are eliminating any impediments to people with disabilities. And so obviously sidewalks are the most fundamental mode of transportation and are absolutely essential for people who are economically disadvantaged. And so in recognition of these things, Council did put $100,000 of additional money from American Rescue Plan Act funds towards safe sidewalks. And so we are moving forward assertively. That will go a long ways in taking care of tripping hazards. Also, we did complete with $50,000 our annual restriping project. This was to put in stop legends and stop bars, this time in Victoria by the Bay. And that's a safety project. Next slide, please. So the Willow Palm Pedestrian Sidewalk Improvement Project will install sidewalk from the Hercules Transit Center to Willow and Palm, connecting then Foxborough and the trees and flowers for pedestrians. It's funded with a $1 million Measure J TLC grant, which is the majority of the $1.4 million anticipated to construct the project. We're pushing hard to finish the design. Currently, we are waiting for a railroad permit We're checking an East Bay Municipal Utility District water line that may be relocated. And we have applications into PG&E for a point of connection for the pedestrian scale lights, which will enhance the safety in the area. So we're making every effort to be in construction on this project this summer. We also completed the Turquoise Drive Rehabilitation Project, which was another project on their consent calendar tonight. And this used green technology to recycle existing asphalt in place. And so paved new surfacing on Turquoise from Lower Cinnabar to Obsidian. Additionally, we extended the traffic calming striping from Obsidian to Onyx Court up the hill. So when people come down the hill, they have a center line, and there's also a lane diet to encourage them to slow down. I apologize, we did miss one project, which was the Sycamore Avenue Street Rehabilitation Project, and that will grind and resurface Sycamore Avenue from Refugio to Palm. It's a $1.3 million project. We have a $500,000 federal grant. Good news, we just received what's called the E76 from Caltrans, which is the authorization to proceed to construction. So we intend to be building this project this summer. Next slide, please. So the conceptual plan for Village Parkway traffic calming has been completed. And I'd like to invite everyone to come hear about the plan and provide feedback at the next Council Public Safety Traffic Subcommittee meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, March 30th at 6 p.m. We did notice everyone in the neighborhood, over 1,000 residents. I will say for the first time, we're going to propose using what's called the traffic hump, which is a vertical deflection. That will require people to slow down to 15 miles an hour. However, we are a little bit over budget on that, so more to come. The streetlight replacement project has been completed. This is for 143 streetlights in the Gems, Birds, and Village Parkway area. It's $160,000 worth of work. It'll be coming back to council at the next meeting for acceptance. We've achieved a major benchmark here in that we've converted all the streetlights from high pressure sodium to energy efficient LED. Over 1,000 streetlights. Of those, 375 also included replacing the wood poles with metal poles. So we're pretty much wrapping up that phase. There are still some stragglers out there that we've seen that we do still need to convert out. On to the next slide, please. We also recently completed the Foxborough Sewer Access Road. So this provides access to a manhole, which is a hot spot and needs to be cleaned. So it's important to have access. It also serves as the pathway linking Lower Foxborough and Upper Foxborough. And we put in a driveway as well as bollards to prevent people from unauthorized access. The Sycamore Avenue lower trunk main is fully designed. We have a construction manager on board. It's $13.5 million, fully funded. It will place about a mile worth of the city's primary trunk main from Duck Pond Park to the wastewater treatment plant. However, we have a hiccup, which is that we have been unable to get our permits. So one of the things that the pandemic has caused is a massive slowdown in working with the regulatory agencies. We're almost coming up to a year now on waiting for the Corps of Engineers permit. Next slide, please. So this, of course, is the Energy Conservation and Generation Project, or Energy Project, which was $4 million, installed solar canopies, light conversions, and then also replaced the HVAC at City Hall. So the investment in green infrastructure for energy conservation and generation. One of the things we realized with this project is over this last decade, we've been really challenged financially as a city. So we've been going on a pay-as-you-go methodology, and we've deferred a lot of maintenance. So one of the things we're starting to think and talk about internally is developing a facilities master plan over a 10-year period where we assess all our facilities, figure out what the deferred maintenance is, and then how much funding is needed so we don't get surprised moving forward with a huge expenditure in 1 year, which we're unprepared for. So it would be strategic for us to do that and plan on introducing that at a later date. The Corporation Yard landscaping, this was to provide a visual screen for the car guard from both Sycamore Avenue and Willett. So we have a contractor on board. At this point in time, we're waiting for plant materials. the pandemic has affected the landscaping business the most out of any we've encountered. And so we're in a wait and see on that, but we do plan on using fence fabric, incidentally, as a screen because the plants will need time to mature. So then on the police department restroom remodel, we did meet, or locker remodel, I should say, we did meet with an architect who specialized in police buildings design and remodels. And what we learned is City Hall was built for police departments were designated as a critical structure, which means they have heightened building safety and they're fortified. And if we in fact touch sort of anything in the building, we may have to retrofit the whole building. Additionally, construction costs, as you may be aware, have gone way up with the pandemic. So $100,000 that we had budgeted isn't going to be sufficient. So we are huddling up and looking at alternatives moving forward. So next slide, please. At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Christopher Roque, Parks and Recs Director.
Thank you, Director Roberts. So the next two slides I have here are broken down into a couple of different categories. The first one being buildings and facilities. On here, there's three different photos of three different projects. The replacement of the Community Swim Center diving boards. The boards have been ordered. They are, we anticipate receiving them sometime in April. As soon as we get them in, they'll be installed well before summer comes up. The other two projects, the Community Swim Center safety fence replacement and the Swim Center gym floor replacement, along with other building and deferred maintenance projects, we are in a gathering mode of quotes for a variety of different things. So we're still collecting that information. The fencing structure is unique around the pool. As you can see, there's a degree of rot and it needs to be replaced. About 700 linear feet of fencing, so it's going to be quite a project. And the gym floor, you can see from this photo too, it was damaged from rollaway or rolling in heavy baskets that did some damage to the floor. There's also some water damage as well that we need to take care of. So the next slide is the Parks and Rec and Open Space is the other category that we broke up these CFP projects into. The Sycamore Avenue mural restoration was an alternate decision package that was approved in the budget last year. We have worked with the artist. We are in the process of finalizing a contract with the artist, and he is set to work and start the project in May and will be finished before the end of June. The Children with Disabilities Swing Set project, there's a picture of it right here. It's a WeGo swing. We just recently talked about this in one of the previous council meetings, and additional funding was allocated towards it. We are excited about finalizing this with a vendor contractor and getting that project started. And then BeachNut Mini Park this is a concept rendering of what BeachNut Mini Park could be. This is part of our Prop 68 project that has been approved, and it's the per capita grant, which sends money back to cities to work on projects. And this is the project that we're going to be working on. So those are all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to Director Roberts for this final slide.
Thank you, Director Roque. So the Baywood tree replacement project is out to bid. We're opening bids on April 1st. This will replace 34 trees on Baywood Boulevard, remove and replace them as the roots are wreaking havoc with people's sewer laterals, water lines, curb and gutter, and the sidewalk. We have a budget of $162,000, and given the issues with supply chain, we're actually requiring at this point that the successful contractor purchase and store the replacement trees at the maintenance and operations yard before starting work. That's how challenging things have gotten. So we're crossing our fingers and hoping the bids come in within the $162,000 allocated for the project. Next is the Victoria Linear Park. And this is where 2 lines of pine trees are encroaching on the adjacent private residences. They're pushing up sidewalks, fences, rubbing up against the building and windows. So we're going to be removing 37 of the pine trees, replacing about half of them. We still have to reach out to the residents and the HOA, so that's still some months out. On the Refugio tennis court tree replacement, this is removing some nuisance trees, and that work is currently scheduled, and we're waiting for the contractor to come in and remove the trees. Lastly, I did want to mention that similar to facilities, a building facilities master plan, we realize we haven't invested that much money in the parks over the last 10 years because of the city's financial challenges. But moving forward, it's time to look at and do an evaluation of our facilities. Additionally, we do get questions from residents about resurfacing tennis courts or putting in a bocce ball court, or as you know, we have the retaining wall around Refugio Lake, which also needs to be dredged. So there's a large variety of projects. We want to take a look at those, get an idea of the cost to address them, organize them, prioritize them. We think we probably need feedback from the community to do that. So what it's looking like potentially is a Parks Master Plan Update Light. So we're in discussions about that internally, and I'm sure we'll be bringing something back to council at a future date. Next. So at this point, Matt Todd from Graybo and Scott is going to load up the, there we go, the RITC presentation. So for many years now, the Hercules Regional Intermodal Transportation Center has been the marquee project. It's a planned transportation hub that will be served by bus, train, ferry, and bisected by the Bay Trail. So when completed, it'll be the first of its kind on the West Coast. And as the centerpiece and anchor of the Waterfront District Master Plan, it's not just a transportation hub, but in a broader sense, a community hub, because it'll provide a sense of downtown, attract new businesses, be an economic driver for the city, and offer unparalleled access along the waterfront. It's all about placemaking. So Napa has Oxbow Market, in Concord, there's Todos Santos Plaza, and perhaps most similarly, Oakland has Jack London Square. So this would be the making of Hercules' place, but to a scale and configuration that best meets the needs of this community. Matt from Graybo and Scott will now lead us through the next few slides illustrating the benefits of this transformational project.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts just summarized the project in a great way in that big picture scheme of things. And I will probably dive a little more into some of the transportation details of it. So the RITC, it's going to provide City of Hercules a realistic transit alternative to I-80 to connect Hercules with the rest of the Bay Area and the region. It's going to include multiple modes of transportation, of travel options. And the work to date has already really transformed this area into something that it didn't look like just a couple of years ago. So what benefits is the RITC going to give the city? Well, first is it's going to provide an alternative to the congestion on I-80. That congestion, it's unpredictable, and it's projected to continue to grow over the next years, with 2040 being like over 23% higher than today. We also have the impact of pollution, and when we look at what a train can do versus what the cars are doing, one train car can carry up to 250 passengers, so that can remove a lot of cars off our roadways in the community. We already talked about that the project includes bicycle and pedestrian modes for environmental benefits. We've done some calculations, and we can remove up to 4.3 million miles of VMT annually with RITC in place. And then when you turn that into economics, that's 3,000 daily or over $1 million annually that you get benefit from reducing that VMT in the community. And then Mike, I think I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, Matt. So 3 phases of the RITC have been delivered to date. Next slide, please. The first one is Path to Transit, which was completed in 2017. And that was a $13 million project, which was all transportation related costs were funded through federal, state, and regional grants. It's the most impactful project to date. Extended John Muir Parkway to connect with Bayfront, including the bridge over Refugio Creek, restored 1,500 feet of Refugio Creek. And for me, this is the challenge slide. What you see are aerials working first backwards in time. So all the way to the left, you can see Hercules Bayfront prior to Path to Transit being constructed. Then you can see Path to Transit with restored Refugio Creek. And then to the right, scant 5 years later, you see, given the backbone was installed, how it incentivized the adjacent private development, which previously that land lay fallow for a decade or two. So, and to date, $275 million in private investments have been put into the exchange and Grand, and now it looks like the developer is moving forward with MP and O, which will be another $300 million investment in those buildings. So this is what was accomplished in a scant 5 years. So the challenge to me, is then to look forward and try to envision what this area will look like with the RITC being completed. Next slide, please. So the Bay Trail East was completed in 2016, $7 million funded entirely with grants, connected Victoria to John Muir Parkway. It's an extremely popular section of the Bay Trail. It's highly used by pedestrians, joggers, bicyclists, and it offers panoramic views of the San Pablo Bay. Secondly, it also created the right-of-way for the third track for the future rail station. Next slide, please. So this is Bay Trail West, which connected the bottom of railroad halfway to Santa Fe along the bay to tie into the existing trail. It was 1.3 million, again, almost completely funded by federal grants. And it enjoys high level of use as well. Next slide, please. So there are 3 phases remaining for the RITC to construct the infrastructure needed for a train to stop. This point moving forward, what you see is a conceptual plan. It's something that was put together by staff, but using just basically the available size parcel, the need for bus service, and then of course the structure itself. So this is by no means, a finished product. It's just staff's work to date. And I imagine there's quite a bit of visioning moving forward on this. Next slide, please. So this is the same concept shown in engineering drawing. It's a little hard to see. So fortunately, Matt has his virtual laser. So Matt, if you could show us the bus pull around. And then also the access structure. Thank you. And then next slide, please. You can see it a little better here. Hopefully that helps. Next slide, please. So staff's also preliminarily explored the option of underground parking under Block I, which is the train station. This concept here has a total of 65 stalls. And again, this is purely conceptual. Obviously moving forward, there needs to be future discussions about parking demand. Next slide, please. At this point, Matt.
All right, thank you, Mike. So this is to date that we wanted to talk about. The city's been very successful to date in secured and expended about $46 million worth of grants, These have been federal, up from local all the way up to the federal level. Our granting agencies, our funding partners have included WICTAC, CCTA and the Measure J money, East Bay Regional Park District, Caltrans, and then also federal earmarks. So it was a combination of multiple grants to get all the work that's been completed to date in the ground and being used today. So then we go to the future. And so our additional 3 phases, the estimated cost of that work is about $67 million. And so we have been working on a plan of how to proceed. So first, we've been looking at what are the different funding sources that we could be opportunities for us at the federal, state, regional, or local level. In your agenda packet, there is a table that lists out over 40 different potential funding opportunities that we have been looking at. We are also meeting with stakeholders and funding agencies right now. So we've identified this breadth of potential grants. Meeting with the partners, we want to maintain that regional support that this project has garnered over the years, and also just let everyone know where we are in the project, what is the current status right now, and that we are moving forward with working on a plan, a strategy on how to get the remainder of the funds so we can get the train station, get what we need to get a train to stop here in Hercules. And then with that, I am going to pass the baton to Mr. Eric Zell, who's also on the RITC delivery team.
Yes, good evening, council members, mayor and council members. Eric Zell. I'm a sub-consultant to Graybo and Scott on this project. I've been working on this project for a number of years, pre-COVID and then now post-COVID, and very happy to be able to help here. As you see on this list, and I won't go through this list of elements of your RITC, but this really is a model for the Bay Area, if not the state of California, of how to do development around transit, around multimodal transit. And as somebody who works throughout the Bay Area, this really is one of the best examples of doing that. And I think that Hercules should be proud of the fact that you have taken on this task. Not easy, as you've certainly come to learn. I was very involved early on in, I guess, 2019 to work through the Capitol Corridor and get this station identified and recognized as a candidate station, which was one of the first big milestones that this project needed to meet. We have done that. In fact, we met with Capitol Corridor staff today. I'm very excited about, as Matt pointed out, we think we have a lot of opportunity here. And what I really wanted to just stress is that both the work that's been done to date and the opportunities in the future, I think are excellent. There's probably no better time in the many years I've been working in transportation, which is now about 40, where there's been this much transportation funding available on the federal and state level. And in addition, with the regional measures that are being considered, whether it's a faster measure in 2024, anything that CCTA may decide to do in the future, which they're going to have to do to maintain that agency and continue to fund projects. There's a lot of great opportunity out there. Part of what my job is on this is to both assist your team, your staff, and the Gray Bowen team in working with the various county and regional and state and federal agencies to identify the right source of funding for this project. As Matt said, they've identified a lot of sources, but we all obviously are going to have to narrow this down to a few that we think you are best qualified to get. And then we have to go after it. And when I say go after it, I think we're in a great position to go after it. I think we have a lot of support from elected officials, not only within Hercules, but outside of Hercules and on the regional level, as well as in the state and federal level. And that's really a testament to this council and prior councils in helping to develop that. And so, you know, with Councilmember Kelly now being the chair of CCTA, which is great timing. It's good you didn't do it during COVID, Councilmember Kelly. I'm glad you're doing it post-COVID because now we get to really go after it. And I know that we have very strong support. Supervisor Glover, Rinda Council Member, and MTC Commissioner Amy Worth, as well as Supervisor Glover, who's an MTC Commissioner. Supervisor Spearing from Solano County has been a huge supporter and frankly is most responsible, I believe, in getting us candidate station status. So I think we're really in a great place to move forward and make this happen, both in terms of getting the support and getting the funding ultimately to deliver this project. So I just wanted to close with that. I'm very optimistic about the opportunities here. And I know that the team is certainly available for any questions you would like us to answer. Thank you for the opportunity.
And Mayor, that completes our report this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Can we go back to, can we close the slideshow? It was a very, very good slideshow. Thank you for a very detailed presentation. I'd like to hear from the public, but I wanted to see if council has an issue with hearing public comment here. Okay, let's, through our city clerk, if we have any public comment on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Looking to our attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raise hand icon, or you may dial *9.
Okay, I thought we might have more just because I saw the list of folks there. So I'll go to Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Yeah, I think we're in a great place now, particularly for the RITC. And you know, recently I was talking with the mayor of Pittsburgh, Holland White, and he said that his city really looks to Hercules for a model area down by the bayfront with all of the development and bringing in the train and eventually the ferry and so forth. And he and Supervisor Glover, they have a parcel up there in Pittsburgh and they'd kind of like to replicate our idea because it is really, really popular. So I think we're in a fabulous place. We're at a very good time. And I think we're raring to go to definitely get some funding. So thank you very much for the whole RITC team. Appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Walker Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everyone who presented tonight. I really enjoyed it. I hope the folks at home did too. My question is more so about the housing. What are some of the plans in place to make sure that we can make Hercules as affordable as possible and allow people like myself who have moved out but still live in town to be able to purchase a home someday? Because I would hate for people to have grown up here to be pushed out here.
Very, very timely question. Vice Mayor, I'll have our Community Development Director, Robert Reber, respond.
And Mr. Reber, I don't think we have you. And we might be having that same audio issue that we had a week or so ago. How about we go to Councilmember Romero? We heard Vice Mayor's question. We can see if we can get the audio issue resolved.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Bailey. I want to thank staff for the report. I agree that Eric Zell has put a lot of time in, and I remember coming as a private citizen and hearing that we were on the list for Capitol Corridor. We had letters from congressmen, but that doesn't do us any good unless we're on the Capitol Corridor list, which we are now. And I think Graham Bowen and Eric Zell did a great job, and also staff. I think we brought in almost all the Capitol Corridor directors to visit our site. They were all impressed, and it helped. And I was very, so as we've talked about local congressmen, you know, we have the possibility of having John Garamendi possibly as a congressman. Let's not forget that we have Mike Thompson that served as our congressperson, and we also have Mr. Congressman DeSaulnay in Concord. So when we start thinking about congresspeople locally, we need to think about the whole area, maybe 9 counties, and list their help, or at least have them understand that we're on that list and we are looking for federal money, because we are there. We have everything ready. Mr. Roberts' staff has done a great job. We are shovel ready. We just need the funding. And finally, after all these years, we can finally take that next step. And I think the next step has to get done in the next year or two. It is that vital. If indeed what Mr. Zell said, that this is about the biggest amount of federal money available for infrastructure, then we definitely, as a council and as a city, need to do that. It was good to see, I think, 5 or 6 members of the public that sent in written communication that still support this. When Gray Bowen and Eric Zell had me talk about it, I mean, absolutely, I'm still for our RITC. That brings everything that we fought for over the last 12 years together. And so tonight, I'm glad we're having this discussion. I think that I hope that Mr. Raber can answer the Vice Mayor's questions about affordable housing, and I'll relinquish my time right now so that we can allow Community Services Director Raber to speak. Thank you.
Well, I hope I can answer too. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, good. All right. Well, thank you for the question, Vice Mayor Walker Griffin. So just focusing on the waterfront development, since that is what surrounds the RITC that we're talking about. That project, the Bayfront project, is governed by a development agreement that requires that at least 5% of all the units there be provided as affordable to those making 60% of the average median income, the area median income. And we're seeing that with the recently opened Grand Apartments. 15 units there are affordable to those just making the 60% AMI, as it's referred to. We've also seen above and beyond what's required in the development agreement with the Exchange building, which was recently, with council's approval, converted to what we call workforce housing at the moderate level. So those making 80 to 120% of AMI. So we are delivering on providing or seeing units made available to those making less than market rate incomes. We've seen this with other projects like the Hilltown project that's also governed by a similar development agreement that requires affordable housing units. But above and beyond what we're embarking on now is our housing element update. And just last night, we had a community workshop to get feedback. And certainly a large part of that is demonstrating to the state that the city is doing its fair share to ensure that providing housing for future generation and accommodating growth. But a big component of that are the affordable housing units at different levels. And so we really encourage members of the community to participate over the next couple of months as we formulate policies that will go into that housing element and that will be coming back to council for your consideration and adoption before we submit it back to the state.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Reber. Councilman Romero.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bailey. I also wanted to continue with Assembly Member Jim Frazier, who recently retired. It was my understanding that he is actually working for a transportation group, and ex-Assembly Member Frazier is a big advocate of our project, and we would serve ourselves well by trying to find out who he's linked with. I know that last year or earlier this year, I'm sorry, it was last year, that we had sent documents pertaining to the RITC. So Mr. Frazier has those documents, and sounded like now is the time to maybe start making contact with him and see if he's willing to pursue funding. So I also think it's really valuable that as a council, we start looking into hiring somebody to start looking for grants or writing grants for us. I think those are the steps as a council that we need to work with. Years ago, we had William Silva that helped us write some grants to start some of the preliminary work on the RITC. So we can't depend on staff to do that. We as a council need to hire somebody to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Romero. I think we've talked a lot about the RITC, so I think there's some interest here with that. I have also spoken with each of the candidates for our congressional district, and this has been a topic of conversation with them. So I think all of them are aware of the RITC. I think others have done the same, but I think it's important that we do get that message out. Again, I think it's a great presentation from staff. This is just informational, so we take no action here. But I just want to see if any other council members have any other questions before we move to the next agenda item.
Mayor Bailey, if I may interject,
Yes.
apologize, but we do have some hands up in the attendees list if you would be willing to
Okay.
reopen.
Okay.
Looking to our attendees. Susan Keefe, go ahead. I'll start your timer for 3 minutes.
Good evening, Ms. Keefe.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I moved to Hercules in 2006. And from 2008 on, I've been involved with this project as a community member. I was a member of the Waterfront Initiative, pushing hard for that. I think Robert Reber probably remembers me. And I was a part of the Waterfront Task Force. And I have to tell you, I am so excited. I think we are actually finally at a point where we might actually make this happen. And I would encourage you to see if there's any way you can push whoever our representative is to get some money from that new infrastructure tax bill, because I think this is a perfect project for that. It's regional. It does a lot of good things for not just Hercules, but for the whole Bay Area community. So I would encourage you to push hard as a council at a political level to get us some of that money. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe.
Thank you. Mingde Zhu, go ahead.
Good evening. If you could just please unmute yourself. You'd like you're muted from our end. Okay. You appear to be unmuted, so go ahead, please. Okay, we can't hear you on this end, so what I can invite you to do is if you're having technical difficulties, we could try again at the next public comment section, which is item 15. Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and have us move forward. We have one more hand raised. Looks like Madam City Clerk.
Annie Wright, go ahead.
Good evening, Mrs.
Hi.
Wright. Hi.
There's a technical issue. I wanted clarification. Are we on non-agenda items yet for public comment?
We are not.
Not yet.
The public comment that's here right now is a discussion item, which is the, I'm sorry, hang on a second. Site development discussion item, 22-112.
Okay, I was listening and thank you. So is it number 15 then for the public comment?
That's our next
Yes.
open public comment for things not on the agenda,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
That will end public comment.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is review of Hercules Communication Assessment Report and discussion. City Manager Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. When I was hired, the City Council indicated that they were interested in different and innovative ways of reaching out to the community. And in late 2021, the City Council authorized staff to engage Trepepi Smith to research and review the existing communication efforts for the city. And the goal of that assessment was really to evaluate the way that we communicate, engage with people, and make recommendations for how we can more effectively reach people and people that aren't generally used to talking to us, but have an opinion about city business, civic business. So Trepepi Smith began in January, and they hosted a series of interviews. Council members were interviewed, staff was interviewed. Tonight, they will be presenting the findings of their assessment. Staff requests the City Council receive the report and provide comments on the communication assessment. After this meeting, staff intends to use the assessment to develop our first strategic communication plan. And so tonight from Trepepi Smith, we have Ryder Smith, Jennifer Vaughn, and also Karen Villasenor. And I'll turn it over to Trepepi.
Thank you, Dante. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Phenomenal. I got my huge mic going tonight, so I'm really trying to come into you like I'm a true professional broadcaster this evening. Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, for the chance to present this evening. As your city manager, Dante, noted, my name is Ryder Smith. Karen Villasenor on our team has joined us. She's a senior business analyst on the team. And Jennifer Vaughn has joined us. She's a director on the team. For context, Jennifer Vaughn as a director, is anticipated to serve as an account manager and ongoing project management for our engagement with the City of Hercules. Karen has a particular expertise in local government, but especially doing these communications assessments. She's had either the fortune or misfortune of having partnered with me on a dozen of these or so. So she's been through the fire, so to speak, and done a great job. And I will just note, our firm works with over 150 government agencies up and down the West Coast, primarily in the state of California. We actually had some history doing some work in Hercules in the past. So it was great to reconnect with a couple council members who'd been involved before. And we'd also had a chance to do a bit of work with Dante previously as well. So it was great to have the opportunity to come back and work with him again. It was an excellent choice. Congratulations to the council on your selection of Dante as your city manager. All right, next slide. So, fundamentally, why are we here? I mean, we were asked to review all these elements that your city manager denoted. Apropos, I will also say tonight that we're coming here because you have your brand spanking new city clerk with the PIO job title in it, Public Information Officer. So it's phenomenal. We look forward to her devouring our report, hopefully, and offering some insights as she executes her role. But we were looking at all these various elements as part of our scope of the engagement and doing what we call our express communications assessment. Next slide.
Excuse me, Ryder, I can't see your presentation.
Oh, you can't?
Can anyone else see the presentation? Okay, maybe it's just me.
Yes,
okay, that's fine. I have it in front of me. Thank you.
Okay. Karen, we'll go to the next slide. So as was noted, we executed 12 interviews in the course of this assessment process, including senior staff at City Hall to talk with them about their perceptions of communications, as well as what they identified as the most effective tools they were using to communicate in the city. And then we also had the pleasure of talking with each of the council members, the vice mayor and the mayor, to get their feedback and perspective on what it takes to communicate in the city. Especially as elected officials, the council members have the perspective of what it takes to get a message across and effectively achieve communicating to the public to rise to the level of serving on the council. So it's particularly helpful to have their insights of what it took to deliver that message, because often the same methodologies they used are the same ones the city should be using to reach the public and communicate. Next slide. And then ultimately our goal was to document up the facts and the information, follow up with staff to verify what we thought we heard in the course of our communications to ensure that our report is full of facts and truths. And next, we did some analysis. Particularly, we're pretty nerdy around here, so we love to get into the data and really understand. If we look at your totality of every resident in your city, that's the market share, and how do we penetrate into that market share to get little time slices of people's brains to get them to think about local government, which is always difficult to do. So that was part of our analysis. And then ultimately, we produced a 42-page 42-page report that had very specific action items. So these are kind of segue, as we'll hear, into a strategic plan, as well as very specific, and we had kind of 9 recommendation areas, and each of those recommendation areas has very specific tactical steps that we recommend to kind of go deliver on those particular areas. So Karen, I think with that, we hand it over to Jennifer, right? You're going to talk a little bit about communications and why it matters.
That's right.
Yes. Awesome.
Thank you, Ryder. You'll know that Ryder is very free about talking about how we love being nerds here at Trophy Smith, whether we like that label or not. So thank you for that. And I understand, I think the city is well aware of why communication matters by the pure fact that we're here tonight. But it's worth noting that local government, as you can see in this depiction here, is the most trusted form of government for your citizens. The 48% that's in the little teal marker there, it beats state and federal government as the trusted form for your residents to tap into. And it's most likely the only form of government that they may interact with over the course of the year. So you really are the primary focus for not just your residents, but the businesses in the area. And being able to open those lines of communication with your residents and businesses establishes the transparency to be able to build trust. As you know, your residents and businesses can be very vocal with, you know, the different formats available to them, whether it be Nextdoor or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, what have you. But it's really the opportunity of being able to have a two-way communication and your ability to listen to their concerns that will help you go further in enhancing that trust and transparency that local government has continued to maintain. So with that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to hand it over to Karen. She's going to go into the details about what your city has already been doing as far as communicating with your residents to be able to maintain that level of trust. Thank you, Jen. So as Jen noted, communication is really important for any organization, including any municipality. And for communication to happen, the city does need to have the right tools in place. On this slide, you'll see the communication tools and platforms that our team identified during our interviews and research process. The city's main social media accounts include Facebook, Nextdoor, and YouTube. The police department has Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and the Parks and Recreation Department has their Facebook page. Additionally, the city uses its website e-notifications to send email updates directly to subscribers. You put out an annual city manager letter, the city manager's biweekly report, which we know is the most consistent form of communication, and a quarterly Parks and Recreation activity guide. Additionally, something that we've found that's unique to the city is the banners and signboards that are available for local businesses to promote their events, but are typically reserved and prioritized for city events. So each of these platforms is an opportunity for the city to reach its audience in a different way. Typically, our process for communication assessment includes and begins with looking at the numbers. On this slide, you'll see a snapshot from January 31st of 2022 of the city by the numbers. So this includes the number of followers and subscribers for each major social media network, as well as your e-notification subscribers via the website. They represent the residents that you are currently reaching through your existing platforms. And so just if you can take a quick look and kind of try to remember these as we move into the next slide. So on this slide, you'll see your potential audience. We found from the US Census data, the city's population is a little over 26,000. Additionally, through some tools available from Facebook, we know that the potential reach is about 17 to 20,000 on Facebook. So this is the number of people who self-identify as living in Hercules, California. Additionally, I'll note that from looking at the city's Facebook page,
about 52% of all page followers identify as living in Hercules, California. We do like to show this comparison because it gives you an idea of how much further the city could extend its reach of content. Of course, it's unrealistic really to expect that each platform will always reach this number of people, the city's full audience, but it is a valuable comparison and a goal to strive for.
And Karen, could I just make one point about this too? If you would go back just one element, just go back one more slide to by the numbers. This is one of my favorite things we do for public agencies is to kind of put some real numbers to it, right? And we talk about that mind share, that 26,000 people. Now, obviously that includes children and people under the age of 18 who can't vote yet, and senior citizens, and includes all sorts of people. But what, just by way of example, if you look at, say, the city followers on the city's Facebook page at 1,207, the general evidence suggests that there's about a 5 to 7% reach with every posting that a page does. So if you post on the city's Facebook page, of your followers on the Facebook page, about 85 people are likely to see that post, given typical algorithms that exist with Facebook. Now, if it's super popular or viral, or maybe it's a cat riding a Roomba, like it's going to be very popular and people are going to follow that thing and like it up, and you might get some more reach. But fundamentally, what that means is if you do a post without a boost and you just put it on your Facebook page under the current audience size you have, you're only really going to reach maybe 100 people at best in your city. And juxtapose that with the 26,000 residents you have, or the 16,000 actual registered voters, or the 14,000 people who actually participated in a recent election. So when we look at that gap on that kind of reach versus where we want to get, we always know that's big, and we're always interested in what methodologies can we use to close that gap, whether it's increasing email subscriptions, increasing social media following, using boosted posts to drive outreach and close that gap using the numbers that Karen shared on the next slide. So just keep that in mind as we think about this. And then Karen, go ahead and jump into one of our favorite axioms around here.
Thank you, Ryder. So to that point, we like to share this math equation where content times distribution equals impact. So you can have the best content, but only a few see it, or you can have subpar content and a large amount of people see it. Each of these scenarios really deliver varying positive and negative impact. Positive content with zero distribution doesn't really have any impact. Negative content with a lot of distribution has a lot of negative impact. To be impactful, we really need to create digestible content and pay attention to how it is distributed so that we are reaching the most amount of people at the right time. We know that the city has tons of helpful information or content to share, but if the distribution effort is relatively small, then the impact will also be small. Before diving into our detailed list of recommendations, I do want to offer a list of some summarized observations that came from the research process and the assessment. So in general, we've found that the council, executive leadership team, and city manager all share a common sentiment that the city must improve its communication with the public. And to that end, the city has taken several steps recently to enhance communication efforts, including restructuring its admin services director and city clerk role to be the city clerk public information officer and emphasize PIO duties. We are very excited to work with Lauren. The city doesn't currently rely upon very many communications related policies and practices. And there is not necessarily a central plan or calendar to coordinate. We do note that the city has a mobile responsive website, making it easy for the public to view website from their mobile devices, which is significant as more and more people are accessing websites from their mobile devices. Additionally, one of our most significant recommendations, typically, there is an opportunity to review social media, website, and email metrics more regularly. Now I'd like to go through each of our recommendations that we've listed out in our report. So the first one being to establish formal policies and procedures. So you'll likely notice that for most of our recommendations, they reflect our observations and what I had just summarized just now. So typically managing communications efforts is much easier and more efficient when an organization has policies to guide these efforts. They also potentially provide legal protections. We do recommend that the city establish specific communications related policy, such as a social media policy and a media relations policy. Additionally, we do recommend establishing a cross-departmental communication planning process. So we understand that with limited staff resources dedicated to communication, it might be difficult to put in place a centralized communication planning process. But with some longer term plans and goals and formal planning, that does involve all of your department directors, the city can be proactive and in its outreach and better engage with the public. So typically our recommendation here is to get into the habit of holding quarterly strategic communications planning meetings that involve all department directors, where everyone can list out 6 to 12 months from now, what are the upcoming program services and or events that should be communicated about. We also recommend optimizing email communications. So as noted earlier, the city is currently using the website's e-notification tool to send email updates to subscribers when there is an update that needs to be communicated about. While this tool is a good starting point and can get the job done, it's not typically as robust or efficient as other third-party email marketing services like Constant Contact or MailChimp. Especially with the city regularly putting out the city manager's bi-weekly report, which includes a lot of really good information. There's a really great opportunity to turn that into something that can go out directly to residents within the email instead of an e-notification where people have to go to the website and click through to the PDF. So there's, in addition to the format and the distribution through something like Constant Contact, you do get additional metrics that you can look at to see exactly how successful and effective that communication is. We have also included in the report several action steps on optimizing social media. We know that today social media is really an integral part of any communication strategy. And while the city has presence on Facebook, Nextdoor, and YouTube, as well as the department's several social media platforms, there is an opportunity to define the planning process here, increase activity on your platforms, and streamline those accounts. We also recommend developing a more proactive media engagement strategy. So traditional media does continue to play a really important role in the current communication landscape. Hercules does have several local media outlets that could be leveraged more. As far as a strategy goes, it's important to build those professional relationships with reporters out there so that when there is an opportunity to send out communications related to something that's going on with the city is the first one in line to share the facts about that specific information. And as I mentioned earlier, one of our favorite and typically most important recommendations is to really measure what matters. So currently we understand that the city is not necessarily analyzing and reporting on many metrics for example, the city's website, social media, or other channels. By starting to collect and analyze this data, the city can implement a more data-driven approach and really gather some important insights that can drive the communication efforts and improve improve community engagement. Right now, we can establish a certain strategy for the city on how to communicate with its constituents, and 6 months down the road, we can look at those metrics and find, okay, this is really working well, or actually, no, it's not working that great, and we can avoid adding resources or time to this particular effort. We also recommend developing a brand and style guide for the city. So this is really key for maintaining consistency across communication content, whether it be on your website, social media, or email. This type of guide can ensure that anyone who is creating public-facing content for the city can easily apply the city's brand. And I know that from our interviews, many interviewees said that it was important for the city to establish a brand, as well as that's something that we found in the city's strategic plan. We also recommend collaborating more with local organizations and community groups. As you know, the city's audience does overlap with the audiences of several local organizations, such as the Chamber of Commerce or the Rotary Club would be another example that came up during interviews, as well as the local school districts and homeowner associations. So building relationships with these organizations is a good long-term investment that can offer a lot of benefits when it comes to communication. There is really an opportunity to have this relationship and be able to reach out to your point of contact for this group and say, hey, we have this particular service or event or program that might be of interest to the people in your group. Additionally, engaging with them on social media is another way to build good community engagement. And last but not least, creating specific communication plans for major initiatives is something that we recommend. So while some city news and updates may require a single press release or social media post, there may be other topics that require a more strategic approach. For example, the Regional Intermodal Transportation Center that we heard all about this evening would be a good example where it might require some ongoing communication with constituents, not only residents, but local businesses, to really keep them informed of the center and how it will affect day-to-day life and how it can benefit them. By establishing a clear communication plan for these types of major initiatives, the city can really position itself as the most reliable source of information and additionally take control of the narrative and mitigate any misinformation that might come from those initiatives.
And if I could bridge one comment off what you just said there, Karen. One of the biggest challenges we see cities contending with today is trying to battle misinformation in their communities that's often spread on social media. And I'm sure that as council members and city staff, you've had to contend with that. Sometimes this is inadvertent, and in which case it's called misinformation. Sometimes it's intentional. That's called disinformation. But what I generally observe is that when you have a trusted government and you are trying to consistently have a voice, tell a story, I give credit to the city for being able to consistently execute a city manager update. That takes real grit to crank that out, because that's hard for organizations to sustain. So being able to do that and have a consistent tone and voice and earn trust of the public is really an opportunity to mitigate misinformation spreading by filling the vacuum of information and telling the city what's going on, what's up, explaining what's going on quickly, and breaking the news to the community. So all these elements around strong communications, really mitigate those misinformation issues. Doesn't eliminate them, certainly, but it mitigates them significantly. And that actually creates a lot of efficiency later on, because I can't tell you how many times one rumor starts up and you'll burn through 4 hours of staff time and 4 hours of consulting time trying to unwind that one issue that came up on one social media post. So important things to do, right? Bigger implications.
Thank you, Ryder. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jen to talk about next steps.
Thanks, Karen. So what you've essentially heard is phase one of the process we've been undergoing. And it, as Ryder mentioned at the beginning, it develops the framework for a strategic communication plan. You have everything in place to be able to take the next steps and develop that additional local trust with your local government. And so practically speaking, that would take place in the form of our retainer that will kick in. Hopefully, City Manager Hall, I tried to schedule something today. We're gonna look at calendars to get something scheduled here pretty quickly to kick this off. And what it will entail is bi-weekly calls where we'll get a chance to learn about all these events and so many of these projects you talked about tonight are excellent examples of what we can be including and planning, 6 to 12 months out and be prepared to be able to educate to your community. So those calls are an opportunity to do that. We can also discuss the news articles and press releases that you can be developing and spreading out to the community, the social media management that Karen talked about, as well as the monthly dashboard, which is essential in being able to monitor that so that you can tweak your message and your platforms so that you get that exact right mix so that content and distribution is being met for the perfect match and that you are being successful in reaching the appropriate audiences that you need to for each particular issue that's facing the city. So that will go on monthly, as well as us keeping an eye on your council agendas just to see if, you guys are in the weeds every day and may overlook something that we think is novel and something worthy of talking about that maybe you're like, oh, it's just our new landscape at the police station, but we could take that and make a cool graphic and really make something worthwhile for your residents to get excited about. So that's something else that we'll take care of. And then quarterly, as Karen mentioned, we'll have the opportunity to get that more long-term planning where we can look a year in advance and make sure we have stuff on the calendar to look forward to, with still having that flexibility of adding in those events that come up at the last minute. So we're really excited about taking on this second phase where we can take you for the strategic communication and make sure we maintain that level of consistent communication that will mitigate those issues that Ryder talked about and really just take you to the next step. So we're grateful for being part of this partnership and we're excited to move forward. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you very much. Thought the report was, thank you for the report, I guess, both from Chipepi Smith and then also from staff that clearly has worked with them to help put this together. We will go to council to see if we have any questions. Any comments or questions from council? I see Councilmember Kelly. And if I can ask the slide presentation.
Yes, can we come back to the view so we can see everybody?
Yeah, Karen, if you want to stop sharing your screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Chipepi Smith, thank you very much for your presentation. And no surprise, I read your entire report. I mean, no surprises here. I think you have a lot of good recommendations. I think moving forward, I have founded communications in various organizations I've worked with that you shouldn't try to do too much all at once. If you establish some kind of communication, you want to keep it going. And what we don't want to do, I think, is to start a whole bunch of things and then, drop half of them. So I would urge the city to be cautious about that. Number two, our city clerk and public information officer has just begun here at the city. And so I think we need to work with her to determine what she can do on an ongoing basis over a long period of time, and what perhaps, Trepepi Smith can do. As far as your recommendations go, I agree with optimizing email communications, developing a brand. Social media is certainly important. We do have some good relationships with some of the organizations in town. All the council members do, with the Bayfront Chamber, with the Rotary, and so forth. That's all very good. And I think I just have one question, Mr. City Manager. You don't have to ask it now, but I'm just wondering, what is the ongoing cost going to be to retain Trepepi Smith for their help in these kinds of communications? And I'd like the council just, to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Kelly, did you want a response from staff, or did you?
Not at this time, no. Okay. I don't need a response.
Thank you. Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. I also want to thank Trepepi Smith for the thorough work, and I'm glad they're back in town again. I think this is part of why we brought City Manager Dante Hall into the city of Hercules, was to get us where we're at today in this discussion. A couple of things. I noticed that next door was a big site for the city of Hercules in communication. Does anybody know how many, because next door is not members, but households. So usually it goes by the address where you live at. And so do we know what the penetration of Nextdoor is in the city of Hercules?
So real quick, Karen, I think there's usually two numbers, if I recall correctly, with Nextdoor. There's actual number of signups and there's number of households that are actually penetrated. So we do have, I believe we have both those numbers. Karen, if I recall correctly, your number referenced members, which would suggest individuals. So if you had two people who were members of the same household, that would count as two. Do you have that data off the top of your head, Karen?
Yes, it is 5,328 claimed households.
Okay, so while you guys were discussing, there, as of 2020, there was 8,980 households in Hercules. So that is still close to 60%, if not more, penetration. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm not on Facebook, but back in 2020, I joined Nextdoor. And as a council member, I found it fascinating because you always see somebody saying, hey, why are these spikes sticking up out of our speed bump and punctured a tire? So, or we had somebody people were complaining about the trash not being picked up in Creekside. And luckily I got a hold of then City Manager Biggs, and he reached out, and within a couple of days, they came and picked them up. Obviously, I happened to run into the guy, and he said they had not been cleaned in over 3 months. So I find Nextdoor fascinating. So just this week, in the past week, what I've noticed for the city of Hercules, somebody had chimed in about sewer video inspections that's mandated in Hercules. And so I was gonna go, I went onto the Hercules website, and unfortunately I couldn't really find much. And so as we start promoting city services, we have to make sure our website also performs equally. And so the person was actually looking for vendors locally to contact, but that was one. And then just this weekend, there was a large house party, and several residents stopped by posting on Nextdoor that the police would catch action of this. So there's another function. So there are things, we can work with Nextdoor, because in my mind, I mean, if it's 60, 65% and could grow even more, that is exactly the type of tool that the city of Hercules wants to use to get out our message. And then I also wanted to hear more about you guys did a very nice job about the website visits and users. And I guess my question is for a city of 26,000, there was, your report shows there was 85,842 users in a 1-year span. Is that common? Is that high? Is that low?
Excellent question. So a lot to digest there. If I could just make a couple comments. First, 5 years ago, if you asked me about the primary social media platforms for local government agencies, I would have said Nextdoor, Twitter. And I now have deranked Twitter and put Nextdoor ahead of it for basically the reasons you described. A, Nextdoor has grown its base. B, Nextdoor participants tend to be high propensity voters, higher propensity than the average public. They tend to be more vocal. And the issues that stir up there tend to be more challenging. And they tend to be things that are directly related to what the city is contending with, as opposed to, say, a national issue, right? Not a lot of discussion to say about Ukraine on Nextdoor, but lots of discussion about trash pickup or dogs on leash or something like that. A. B, another important point, the Nextdoor algorithm for cities is much more favorable than Facebook. I said Facebook's about 5 to 7%. Nextdoor, they don't really talk about this number. It used to be almost 100% penetration. You post and every household in the city would see it. For those who are logged on or using the app, it's probably closer to 50% or less at this point in time, but still much more favorable. So even if you have a smaller number of people on Nextdoor, the now people you reach for that distribution side is much more significant. Again, makes Nextdoor a very powerful solution for cities to use to communicate. A third point that I will just raise is you raised a comment about finding information on the city website. One of the great ways that we think city council members can play a role in helping advance communications for the city is to essentially play the independent anchor person who is the purveyor of facts and information to the city, right? Be the arbiters of truth in the community. And it's around simple truths like, what days does the trash get picked up? When is the city considering a general plan? What is the state law that we're trying to adhere to, even if we're upzoning our community? Those kinds of educational roles are really important to build credibility with your community. And they're a really great way for you to come in and distribute knowledge and information. So when you say, for example, hey, we need some information about the mandated sewer inspections. If there's a page of content that we go and create as a comms firm or your PIO has created that page, then we send that link to you as council members and you go into those various Facebook groups, their various Nextdoor conversations. You say, hey, resident, let me help you find this particular content. Check it out. And you're adding a huge service. You're helping distribute that content, and you're taking advantage of that content that the city invested in creating in the first place. So it's a great collaboration that we all need to do together. And then to your point about web traffic, I'm not going to be able to comment specifically about whether or not that's a good or bad number, so to speak. And one of the complications we face is that city headcount almost doesn't matter because I can go down to the city of Coronado or I can go to the city of Monterey, and their traffic to their websites is far greater on a proportional basis to their population because they're tourist destinations. So we'd have to look at a peer-to-peer comparison of some of the bedroom communities in the East Bay to really have a better sense of whether or not that's a reasonable number. I think usually what's of particular interest to us is what the most common trafficked pages are and what is that telling us. And then number two thing that's always interesting is what are people using the search bar for? And if we have that kind of data, it really informs us about what are people coming to seek on the website that we should be instantly answering or maybe proactively communicating about to get out there in the public.
And then through the mayor, one more question is, or comment is, I have to thank Chief Imboden. So when you make a non-emergency call to the police station, you that day or the next day, you get a text and they're asking, hey, how was your call to the police department? How did it go? Blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the type of messaging we want for all of our departments so that when somebody calls, we can get back to them and say, hey, how did we perform? And so I think this is what Mr. Hall is envisioning, and I'm just throwing out some of this stuff out there, but I wanted to thank Chief Imboden for incorporating that. I think that's a really nice tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Grimley. And I'm sorry, I think you brought this forward several months back, so love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey, and thank you, Ryder and Karen and Jennifer, for your presentation today and all of the work that you've done putting this together and communicating with all of us. I'm really excited about the fact not only that you are proposing to not give us some guidance, but to kind of give us some hands-on assistance. I really kind of latched onto the brand style guide. And I think branding is really, really important, not across all of our forms of communication. So I want to know just a little bit more about that. If that's what you're envisioning, that it's not just about how we send out our emails, but how we brand ourselves on social media, how we brand ourselves in our other forms of communication. If we could just speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, I'll speak to this, and obviously I'll invite, I don't want to dominate Karen and Jennifer and give them some room to speak, but I got a couple passionate things on this I just got to get off my chest. So an important thing about brand, right? Brand is not what you see, right? The brand of Target is not the Target dots and next to the red text. The brand of Target is what you think of when you see that what you see is the identity. And a brand guide is designed to kind of encompass all those things, right? It's supposed to encompass the identity, which could be the city seal, a city logo. Sometimes those two things are separate. It can be font choice, color choices. Those are all part of that identity. So when I see something, I know this is from City Hall. This is official trusted information. Somebody is using this to convey official communications from the city. How I feel about that when I see it, am I excited? Am I scared? Am I suspect? Am I concerned? Those are the kind of emotions of the brand experience we are interested in talking about. And a style guide will talk about both those things. And really a brand in its totality will talk about those things. It'll talk about the pillars of the brand. We want people to think of transparency. We want people to think of can-do city, a bedroom community with affordable housing that's designed for middle-class and upper-middle-class families to make it in the Bay. We're a community that's about connected, small organizations that bring our community together. And when bad things happen, we can fix it. We're a community that values an integrated society where people of all races, creeds, and colors and choices in life get along together and work together to make a better community. Like those are the kinds of things that are the brand experience that when people think about your community at large, that they would think about those things. And then one final distinction I would make is sometimes when we talk about city brands, we're talking about the brand of City Hall, like the city government experience, which may be distinct from the community, right? And so you make a choice about, are we trying to brand just what we're doing here at City Hall? Or are we really trying to brand like what we're doing as a community at large, that everybody's included in this process, not just what people think of about that building down the way where they make decisions. Not either one is right or wrong. It's not really saying it's one way or the other, but it's something to think about in that kind of space of what we work on. And then finally, to your point, the work that we do, oftentimes there is an existing PIO or comms function within an organization, and that person is the linchpin for a lot of communications, but we tend to be a force multiplier that wraps around them, because rarely is one person a graphic designer, a communicator, a journalist, a social media maven, a videographer, and all these other tools that are kind of required to deliver messages. And so we'll, as part of that implementation process, we think of what are the brand goals for the city, and then what are the things we want to emphasize and communicate about, right? Are we going to make a special effort to talk about certain days of the year? Are we going to make a special effort to talk about certain community events and really emphasize them? What is the photography we use to emphasize those points? What are the proclamations we celebrate as a city? Those are the kinds of things we think about when we talk about building up that brand value and recognition in a community.
Thank you for that. I have two more things real quick. We spent a good amount of time talking about social media, and there are 3 people on the council that ran for office during the pandemic. So, the power of social media really had an impact for each of us. I know that our vice mayor had a great YouTube video. I know that Councilman Romero had, a significant voice on Nextdoor, and I was just all over Facebook. So we, when talking about using effective and strategic messaging on social media, will you provide guidance and help us develop a strategic plan around the way we use it? Or can you just talk generally?
I can.
Really quick?
Karen, why don't you
I can jump in, Ryder. So yes, as part of our retainer moving forward, we will be coordinating those strategic communications planning meetings that we had recommended. So our team will be scheduling those to ensure that all department directors are included, and we're thinking about the various opportunities that are coming up within the next 6 to 12 months or so. As part of that, that's really the foundation for building that strategic social media plan or strategic messaging for any other platform that the city uses, including social media. So from that communications calendar that we develop together with staff, we will be selecting which topics, which events, programs, services need to be communicated about, and pushing those into a social media calendar, which will be part of our retainer as well in terms of creating and developing that those social media posts. So our team will be involved in terms of creating the strategic messaging for any topic, including that communications calendar and where it needs to be distributed.
And I think one other thing I'll note on top of that as well is we are typically using admittedly basic stuff, but it works. You want Canva of some form, which is a very simple graphic design tool that's used by a lot of communicators. We want to use Canva tools and templates and branded elements that are consistent with the style guide for the city so that it's easily recognizable. And, you know, there's a reason why when they first came out with the internet, there was such a thing as blinky text, because people like blinky text, right? So if we get a little bit of motion on the screen and maybe some text builds or something happens as you scroll through that feed, guess what? We're all humans. We pause. We like, well, what's this motion here? I want to pay attention to that. So we want to be thoughtful about some of that stuff too, because the same tricks that Dove soap uses and Product X uses, we need to use that same thing, because we're in this constant battle with popular culture and with TikTokers and with advertisers and private companies to get a little mind slice of our public to pay attention to their good old local government.
And last piece really quickly, around staffing. We do have a new public information officer. Will you also be providing guidance for us around working in conjunction with her and or providing additional staff in addition to?
So let me respond to that. And yes, so Councilmember Kelly expressed kind of some of her concerns. We actually restructured the position to free up some capacity to take on the PIO duties. And Lauren was attractive to our city because she has done PIO duties, but we're not going to leave her out on a ledge. So yes, we're going to utilize the staff of Trepepi Smith to do some of the writing, the posting, a lot of the heavy lifting. But there needs to be someone from the city who coordinates kind of this communication strategy. It's a different concept. You know, when you talk about introducing different ways of communicating and things we haven't done before, we're really doing it already. We're not going to be doing anything that we don't already do, but we do it in an inefficient way. And we don't know how successful we are at it. So this is a more coordinated way to try to do that. And to answer your question, Councilmember Grimsley, using a firm also opens us up to other tools that we currently don't have. Maybe we want to do videos, you know, to promote projects. We don't have that infrastructure. Trepepi Smith, as our agent, does. And so it really opens us up and augments staff's ability to coordinate the message and reach more people. So the answer is yes. They will be serving to augment staff services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Walker Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bailey, and thank you, Jennifer, Karen, and Ryder for the presentation. I'm going to date myself a little bit here. I'm a Gen Z baby, so 1997 kid. So social media and everything, I grew up with it. So I cannot stress enough the importance of the communication that this has become and how much it is played into day-to-day life for myself as a council member and then just day-to-day life in general. I'll give you a little brief example. I really thought most of my communication with constituents would really be through email. That was absolutely wrong. It's actually through Facebook and Instagram. just today, I've had 5 people reach out on Facebook, and just the past week, I've had 50 people reach out on Instagram. And really, me and my friends have always kind of joked about this, but it's kind of the truth. If you're not on social media, you essentially don't exist. And so that same thing can be brought into what we're doing here at the city government, because essentially Facebook has turned into the more recent Google search bar. If I can't find them on Facebook, I can't find them anywhere. And I think that, for some people who are out there maybe a little more hesitant into our communications with people, see it as an opportunity. I mean, you yourself are using it. Why not the city? And at the same time, too, let it be a beacon of opportunities that we can communicate a lot faster. Because I'll tell you right now, on my political email account, if somebody sends me something from a campaign, it's probably going to go straight to my junk mail. However, if you send something straight on Facebook, I'll probably see it within the next hour or so. So again, kudos to the team, especially when it comes to boosting posts or using the certain algorithms that I'm sure more of my younger folks out there know about, which is don't post at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, but rather post at 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday to make sure that you reach that target audience, because people really do like to communicate with us. I saw it last week. One of the challenges that you mentioned, Ryder, was disinformation. And just last week, I was dealing with somebody on Facebook who was intentionally trying to stir controversy over an item that the individual wasn't in favor of. And it was just simple, high school, college situation. If you're going to make a claim, cite it. Where'd you get your information from? That person couldn't do it. I came along and said, hey, here's the examples of what we're doing with our agenda items. And you can see that rapport and that trust and that communication of people starting to follow it. And then those people that liked my comments or responded to it, they ended up following me and reaching out the next day. So just want to emphasize the importance of this, and thank you for this, because we're moving right into the 21st century.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate it. And it sounds to me like, given your comments about how we're already living in Facebook world, I think Zuckerberg's already achieved his metaverse. We just didn't realize it until now.
Oh yeah, he's winning.
Thank you from the Vice Mayor on the comment. I think what we're looking to do is, first of all, I like data, so I read this thoroughly. I think we're looking to optimize in large part what we already have. Right? We have a website, but we aren't tracking really, I think, what the report says as well as we could on what's there. We have a Facebook page where we post something and it's reaching, in some cases, a few hundred people, when it could be reaching just like thousands of people, right? Just by doing that advertisement, as we did with the. I think we just did one because
housing element.
Exactly, housing element, because I filled out the survey because it came up more than once, right? If the city just posted it, it would have been there once. Because it was an ad, it came up more than once. Second time, I did go ahead and click the link and complete the survey. So I think this is a great opportunity. Again, Councilmember Grimsley brought this up. She and I spoke about it in the past, but I think it's a great way for us to move forward. Optimizing the emails. Should they be a constant contact? I've had that same question. I don't want to open a PDF necessarily. Maybe some folks like it. This is not to take away things away, but it's to improve our way of communicating with the city. I think the branding idea is great. That requires probably some additional funding on logos and kind of figure out how to make all that work out. But I think these are great ideas. What I'd like to do, though, is take a pause here and see if we have any public communications on this particular agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Looking to our attendees. Cordell Hindler, go ahead.
And Ms. Burgess, I'm not sure if you're unmuted, but I cannot hear you.
Still nothing?
Let's see if someone can help out. Thank you, City Manager Hall.
Do you need to unmute there we go.
How about now?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. Cordell Hindler.
Okay, I think I heard no public comment is what I think I heard. Okay.
Hang on, Mayor Bailey. I think we do have a public comment, and Cordell Hindler, I'll bring him in now.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. I do not have hosting ability. I am so sorry. Let me, Christopher Roque, can you bring him in?
He's in. Looks like
Can you hear me now?
Good evening, Mr. Hindler. Yes, we can hear you.
So good evening, Mayor Bailey, Council. My name is Cordell Hindler, and I'm a Richmond resident. First, I do want to welcome Lauren as the city clerk. So that's one. Then, and I do want to thank the folks from Treppy Smith for this presentation. I really learned a lot about what you guys do. So, as Vice Mayor Walker Griffin has stated, I do use Facebook occasionally, periodically, maybe. So I'm thinking that if you want to use the technology, is like if someone posts something, they'll say, okay, they get the idea. So I like the presentation as is. So with that, I'll save my comments for the last item agenda. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hendler. Ms. Burgess, Ms. Burgess or Ms. Martin, any additional public comment?
That will end public comment.
I think I heard no other public comment. Okay. Okay. So with that, I think staff is looking for a recommendation. I think we're kind of moving in the direction of the.
Yeah. We're just looking for comments.
Okay.
We will bring back a
plan, right?
A plan. Obviously, it's going to be sustainable, that matches our resources, because that would defeat the purpose of putting this together. So any other comments, we're happy to hear them.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Yeah, I would just like to suggest to the city manager, just Pepe Smith, if you could make a sort of a phased plan, so we know, what you want to bring in now and then a few months down the line and so forth, so that we can understand how it's going to operate in real time, so to speak. That would be great.
We will absolutely do that. And like I said, a lot of these things are what we're doing already. Just as an example for the housing element, I think we put it out on Facebook and we got engaged 20 people. We boosted the ad, which was a simple task. And over the weekend, we had 70 people. So it's not going to be a lot more work, Councilmember Kelly. It's what we're doing already, but just enhancing it. And we will work with the PIO and also Pepe Smith to make sure that it's sustainable and that we don't take on too much at one time.
Okay, again, thank you very much, City Manager Hall, and for the entire team that worked on this. And for the council members who provided the feedback, we all were interviewed. But I'm excited about it. I think it's a good way to broaden our way we communicate with the community.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next item on.
You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Next item is update on returning to in-person hybrid meetings. And I'm gonna go to City Manager Hall.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm having a little difficulty. Let me just, okay. So this item is something we talked about last meeting. About the potential of returning to in-person hybrid meetings. As you know, statewide, the mask order has been lifted as of February 15th, and fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks in most indoor settings. The counties that are surrounding us have also lifted the mask requirements for vaccinated people. Contra Costa County Health Services issued a listing lifting the mask mandate, but also recommending that we have certain protocol in place if we're going to hold public meetings. And so we've attached that to your staff report about some of the protocol. What we'd like to recommend is that the City Council hosts their first hybrid meeting starting on April 12th, along with the safety recommendations identified from the County Health Office. That concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, City Manager Hall. Are there any questions for the City Manager before we go to public communications? Okay, hearing none. I have a question. Is there a process we can use to where we could look at this, I guess, monthly? What I'd hate to do is not have a process in case we start to there's a variant out there in Europe. It may or may not make it over here. I'm not a physician, but if it did, will we have a process where we could so the opposite of what we've been doing? I think monthly we've been saying, let's continue with the sessions. I think maybe monthly for the next couple months, agree to continue to have in-person meetings, and we can kind of evaluate that as it goes.
We'll happily do that.
Okay, I'd like to see that. Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? Okay, again,
if we can have a vote.
Yes, I was going to get some public comment on this before we voted. Okay, but I do see Councilmember Grimsley has her hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. My question is with regard to hybrid, is that presumably that means continuing to allow our public to have Zoom access for viewing the meetings? Does it also allow for council members when needed to participate via Zoom?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Grimsley. Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Can we get, so it's my understanding you have to have a majority for the hybrid meetings, you have to have a majority of the council in place, although you can have one or two off location. Can we get Mr. Tang to opine, please, for clarification?
Sure. I'm not aware of that requirement, Councilmember Romero, but I can certainly find out if that is a requirement and let you know, all of you know, in a follow-up email. Lori, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And Lori, I know you've been communicating with the city clerks group, perhaps Lauren as well. Have you heard anything about that requirement that a majority of the council needs to be local or in a chamber?
Yes, excuse me. Right now we are still operating under the relaxed Brown Act rules. However, if the governor lifts or discontinues the emergency order, then we go back to following the Brown Act rules, provided there is no other legislation in place to allow, some of this other part virtual, part in-house. So I don't know of anything at the moment that has passed in the legislature. So as far as I know, we'll go back to the old Brown Act rules, meaning that anybody who participates remotely would have to have the agenda notice posted at their site and allow for public to attend, that type of thing, just like we did before. So I think we're okay to do the hybrid with a few council members attending virtually, the rest in person, until that order is lifted, and then the rules will change a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Romero. I think we're going to recommend that we go out to, I guess hearing no other comments from council, I'd like to hear if we have any public comments on this particular agenda item.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Cordell Hindler, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Hindler.
Yes, so good evening, Mayor Bailey, council members. My name is Cordell Hindler, and I'm a Richmond resident. And I do have some information. So our neighbors, the city of Panola, has had a hybrid meeting last Tuesday, and there were, and I spoke with their city clerk, and she said there were about 20 people in attendance, and I'm like, and then people can participate remotely. So half of the people were in person, the other half were remotely. So I'm thinking that this sounds like a good idea, and I can't wait to see you all. I can't wait to see you all in person again, because that way the council chambers is empty. So hopefully at some point, either April or May, whichever is flexible, that we will go back to in person. So with that, I would ask that the council would make a motion, second, prove it, and then send it off. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler.
Charlotte, go ahead.
Good evening, Charlotte.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. What I wanted to speak about is the new Contra Costa Animal Services agreement that went out to all 18 cities. This proposed agreement is stating to increase the funding for each city, the per capita funding, but it does not outline any additional services or much above the bare minimal animal services.
Charlotte, I don't have your last name, so I apologize for calling by your first. Normally, we allow public comment for things not on the agenda.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. You've started. It's okay. We'll make the exception because you started. I don't want to, but I want you to know that was a little bit of an exception. But please continue.
Oh, is it okay? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. The increased fees should equal increased services for this agreement. We are eager for the cities to come together and actually revise this agreement. This agreement is vague, and it does, like I said, does not spell out any of the services the cities will be receiving. We would like to reach out to the city manager in hopes of setting up a meeting to share our concerns with the agreement and what animal services the community needs to be considered in the revised agreement. In May of 2020, Animal Services went to all the cities and stated they wanted to increase their services. The cities declined, and then in September of 2020, Animal Services reduced many of their services. Some were the field officers decreased from 16 to 10, and it reduced its operating hours. On-call coverage was eliminated. It stopped all wildlife calls, and so if a deer were to get hit on the side of the road or any other type of wildlife, a raccoon, they would sit there and suffer, and there would not be anyone to come out and euthanize the wild animal. Before Animal Services would come out and euthanize it or take the animal wildlife to Lindsay Wildlife Museum for rehabilitation. They eliminated that service too. Other counties still currently will take animals to Lindsay Wildlife Museum. The other thing they did reduce was public low-cost spays and neuters. They completely stopped it throughout the county during COVID. They just now started it back up, and very minimal appointments, and they were already filled up for 3 months. In the agreement, it also states they would only have vaccines for the public once a month. And so many people in our community can't afford spays and neuters unless they have the services through Animal Services. So what I'm asking—
Really sorry, but I think your 3 minutes is up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so we need to, I guess it's ask for a motion, but I think just for clarity, City Manager Hall, you want to do a motion and then a traditional vote? Okay. Okay. Hearing yes from City Manager. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Romero.
Yes, Mayor Bailey, I would motion that we approve in-person meetings effective April 12th as hybrid meetings.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? I just want to clarify the point that we will look at in the reverse order, sort of just analyze month to month if we should continue with those or if we should return back to hybrid. Is that
Mayor Bailey, I'll accept that amendment, that we will still continue to do an update the second meeting of each month.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so we have a motion by Romero, second by Kelly. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Grimsley.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Romero.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Walker Griffin. Vice Mayor Walker Griffin.
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey.
Aye. So motion carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is public communications. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment for items that were not otherwise discussed on the agenda?
Looking to our attendees. Cordell Hindler, go ahead.
Okay, so good evening again, Mayor Bailey, Council. My name is Cordell Hindler, and I'm a Richmond resident. So I do have an invitation for you all. So you are cordially invited to attend the Point Richmond Business Mixer on March 31st, which is next Thursday, at Little Louie's Cafe in Point Richmond from 4:30 to 6:30. It's $10 a person. Let's see, that's one. And then also, I do have a couple of future agenda items requests to bring to you all. So either for the 12th or the 26th of April, is to have Sabrina Landry to provide an update regarding how COVID has impacted park services in the East Bay Regional Park. I figure that it's very helpful. And then for the 26th is to invite the folks from the Northern California Promise Coalition to talk to you all about what their program is about and how it relates to, you know, like for first times high school students entering college. So hopefully those items will be added to future agendas. So with that, I'll still waiting for to be go back to in person.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler. I think we have one additional hand raised.
Charlotte, go ahead.
Charlotte, did you have another, a separate item?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, seeing no other public communication, the next item on our agenda is City Council, City Manager, City Attorney announcements, committee, subcommittee, intergovernment committee reports. City Manager Hall, anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to let our Parks and Rec Director, Chris Roque, make a few announcements related to recreation activities in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Hall. I just wanted to make an announcement that our 2022 summer activity guides are printed and on hand, and you can pick up a copy at the Community Swim Center or at any number of our city facilities. You can also decide to go green and go look online and pull the guide off the city's website as well. Everything is up and live. Yesterday we had a huge rush of people come in and lots of activity, phone and in the lobby. So lots of great feedback from the community. We're very excited about that. In addition to that, I wanted to bring up a couple of events that are coming up this week. This weekend on Sunday, we have the Bottles and Bites event here at the Community Swim Center. It will be a great event. You do need to have tickets, and I think that probably somebody else will be talking about that, so I won't mention that anymore there. And then on Wednesday of next week, we have our preschool registration. The public registration opens up for preschool for the next year. We've been getting calls off the hook about that, so we're excited about that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Roque. City Manager Hall, any additional comments there? Or
no other comments, Mayor.
Thank you. City Attorney Tang.
I have no announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we move to council.
We have no announcements.
Okay, is this better? Am I live again? Yes. Okay, sorry about it. It's unstable tonight. Councilmember.
I'll go ahead. I think maybe he was going to call on me. So at the last Contra Costa Transportation Authority meeting, we had a presentation on a possible public-private partnership to engage some dynamic personal micro transit in East County. Some of the cities in East County are very much interested in this. These would be small autonomous vehicles running in their own track. And there is a possible use in East County out by Brentwood, Antioch, and so forth. So that's kind of intriguing, DPMT. And then the second thing was we had a presentation from a planner at MTC about their new transit-oriented communities draft policy. And I have to say that the reaction from all the commissioners was one of real skepticism, because this policy seems to be geared toward the big cities like Oakland and San Francisco, and the kind of strictures that they would put on this kind of transit applications for transit projects might exclude most of Contra Costa County. So CCTA will be sending back some comments about that TOC policy. The last thing was last Friday on March 18th, I was able to go out to a groundbreaking out by Brentwood for their McCollamy Bike and Ped overcrossing. This will connect the McCollamy Trail, which it'll be going over Highway 4, which you can't access now. And it'll be really a game changer for people out there in East County who want to have access. Very much like the Pinole Bridge over the railroad was. So really looking forward to that. It was a great event. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. My video is off just so I can make sure I have audio. Councilmember Romero.
Well, thank you, Mayor Bailey. Just wanted to find out through Director Roque, when is the next Splashalooza?
So I was going to save that for the next meeting, but we are doing the Splashapalooza on Saturday, April 16th. The week before that, we will have our egg extravaganza at the Senior Center on April 9th. So a lot of great events coming up.
So I just wanted to mention, because of COVID, Councilmember Kelly, who was mayor, should have been able to do this. And so I think this would be a first to have two mayors participate in Splashalooza, okay? I think I've been the only one to participate, so I feel sort of left out. But anyway, the challenge is out, two mayors at one time. We'll find out who's a real Splashalooza. Thank you, Mayor.
I will yield to Councilmember Mayor Kelly on that one. Councilmember Grimsley.
If I can unmute myself. So last Thursday, I attended the WCCTA meeting. And I just, on a personal note, this past weekend, I was able to take my 14-year-old son to his first black tie event that was hosted by Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It was held in Concord, so East County, but it was a wonderful event, a wonderful opportunity for young people to be celebrated for participating in a mentorship program. And this was the event for the completion of that event. So I just wanted to share that with you and with the community. If anyone's interested in those types of activities or events, they can contact me and I'd be happy to share information about that. I also just want to bring to council that at the last meeting, I asked for an agenda item that I'd like to rescind, and that is related to the delinquent accounts for the mandatory garbage and solid waste removal. And so I will rescind my request to have that agendized for the second meeting in April. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grimsley. Vice Mayor Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I briefly forgot where I was at. But my announcement is be sure to buy your Bowels and Bites tickets. Go on the Hercules Education Foundation website. Tickets are still available. It's a good time. I'm one of the board members, so help out the folks here in Hercules, especially our students. And that is all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm going to try this with audio. The Traffic and Public Safety Subcommittee will meet on next week, Wednesday. The agenda item is basically Village Parkway traffic calming. It was discussed briefly during our upcoming capital improvement projects. So if you'd like to come out or check the website for the link, that should be available to you soon if it's not available already. I did have the opportunity to attend most of the element, about 15 minutes late coming in, but there was lots of discussion. Vice Mayor, there was some discussion about affordable housing. So that question did come up among others. So it was good to hear. Actually, I didn't hear the community, but I got to see the chat comments and having them read out loud, community comments about their folks' vision for Hercules and some explanation about increasing densities and why that may be occurring. Otherwise, that's all that I have for future for that. We'll go around the room, I guess, for future agenda items, same order we just did. Well, actually, I won't call. If you have a future agenda item, please just speak up. I think I heard, did I hear Councilmember Grimsley had one, or did I miss this? Nope.
No, I was
rescinding one. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. So with that, I think that is all that we have for this evening. So we will see everyone at the next regular scheduled City Council meeting. Will be on Tuesday, April 12th at 7 p.m. Have a good night, everybody.